This is the story of how the Supreme Court decided the 2000 presidential election and effectively chose the 43rd president of the United States.
All votes count twice! All votes count twice!
What do we want?
Count our votes!
When do we want it?
Now!
Now the U.S. Supreme Court has spoken.
I believe things happen for a reason.
On December 12, 2000, the bitterly fought presidential election was finally settled when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Republican Texas Governor George W. Bush over his Democratic opponent, Vice President Al Gore. So, how exactly did we get there?
In Florida now, they order the recount.
Recount after recount.
Automatic recount.
Manual recounts.
After a fierce campaign, it all came down to election night, November 7th, 2000. Gore, as expected, carried the popular vote. But as we all know, it all comes down to getting those 270 electoral college votes. Just ask Hillary Clinton. By the end of the night, it all came down to just 25 electoral votes.
They need Florida. Florida.
News networks eventually called the Sunshine State for Gore, but then retracted the call.
That would be something if the networks managed to blow it twice in one night.
Well, the contest dragged on into the night, with supporters from both sides holding vigil until the results were clear. But then...
The crowds in Texas erupt. At 2:17 a.m., Mr. Gore calls Governor Bush, concedes defeat and promises, quote, to work with the president-elect.
That should have been the end of it, right? Well, it wasn't.
The vice president has recalled the governor and retracted his concessions.
The next day, the country woke up confused, with no solid answer on who would become the next president.
Mr. Vice President, did you win the election, sir?
We're having a great run here.
Thank you.
Back in Florida, the votes were so close that an automatic machine recount was ordered.
As of 5 p.m. today, the unofficial certified results of the recount are as follows. Governor George W. Bush, 2,909,661. Vice President Al Gore, 2,907,877. A difference of 1,784 votes.
After the machine recount was complete, Bush's lead had dropped to just 327 votes. In Florida and across the country, Americans gathered to show their support for one candidate or another, and to call for another recount or for none at all.
So the Democrats, as they keep touching the ballots, maybe like when Jesus broke the bread and fed 5,000, they'll touch the ballots and make more. I'm afraid of them people making more out of nothing.
Gore's team then requested a hand recount in just 4 of Florida's 66 counties. All of them were, you guessed it, Democratic strongholds. Well, the matter at hand wasn't just about recounting votes. You see, some counties use butterfly ballots, leading to talks of the so-called hanging chads, where the punch hole wouldn't detach to register a choice for one candidate or the other. The concerned counties hurried to finish the manual recount before the deadline, but only one succeeded. Katherine Harris, Florida's Secretary of State, wanted to officially certify the results of the election on November 17th, without taking into account the results of the recount. But the Florida Supreme Court stopped her in order to consider an appeal from the Gore campaign. It ultimately ruled to require a statewide manual recount. So, on November 26th, 19 days after the election, it seemed the country might finally have an answer.
The election was close, but tonight, after a count, a recount, and yet another manual recount, Secretary Cheney and I are honored and humbled to have won the state of Florida, which gives us the needed electoral votes to win the election.
But George W. Bush, the candidate, seemed to have gotten a bit ahead of himself. His earlier appeal to block the Florida recount was taken up by the United States Supreme Court, which convened on December 1st, 2000, to hear his case. The country waited on pins and needles. Never before had the High Court weighed in on the issue.
We are very close to knowing who actually won Florida and who, therefore, won the presidency.
The same day, December 9th, 2000, responding to an emergency appeal by Bush, the Supreme Court officially ruled that the Florida recount be suspended. So, how did it all end? And how exactly did George W. Bush end up as the 43rd president? Well, on December 12, 2000, the 5-week battle for the White House came to a head when the Supreme Court released 2 decisions. First, that the recount itself had been unconstitutional, as different standards were applied across Florida's counties, in violation of the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause. Secondly,
could we impose a standard and have the entire state recounted in time for the Electoral College to meet? They might have decided no.
Finally, after 5 long weeks, court battles, and spirited protest, the recount was over.
Just moments ago, I spoke with George W. Bush and congratulated him on becoming the 43rd President of the United States. And I promised him that I wouldn't call him back this time.
Our nation must rise above a house divided. Americans share hopes and goals and values far more important than any political disagreements. Republicans want the best for our nation, and so do Democrats. Our votes may differ, but not our hopes.
So there you have it. Hanging chads, butterfly ballots, Supreme Court protest, Team Bush, Team Gore. That's the story of the 2000 presidential election. Oh yeah, and recounts, recounts, recounts.